The weeks passed, and something wonderful began to happen. Yuna started to laugh again. It began with small things. Jiho would tell her stories about Earth, about his childhood in a small town near the mountains. He spoke of his family, his strict father, his gentle mother, his annoying little sister, who always borrowed his things without asking. He told her about human holidays, about festivals of light and celebrations of love, about the strange foods humans ate and the stranger things they did for entertainment. "Wait," Yuna said one evening, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Humans put themselves inside metal boxes and roll down hills covered in snow? For fun?" "It is called sledding," Jiho replied with a grin. "And yes, it is great fun. Until you crash into a tree. That sounds dangerous." "It is. Humans do many dangerous things for fun. We climb mountains. We dive into deep water. We jump out of flying machines with nothing but cloth to slow our fall." Yuna shook her head slowly. "Your species is insane." Jiho laughed. "Yes, we know. But we have a saying on Earth. Life is short, so make it interesting." Life is short. To Yuna, who had lived for 8 centuries, those words were strange and beautiful. Humans lived for such a brief time, 80 or 90 years if they were lucky. Yet they packed so much living into those years. They loved deeply, laughed loudly, and faced death with a shrug and a smile. She began to understand why the galaxy was both fascinated and terrified by humans. Their friendship did not go unnoticed. The other species, on the eternal dawn, watched with confusion and concern. They whispered in the hallways, louder now than before. "The human is spending time with the beast. Does he not know what she is? What she can do? He will regret it. She will drain him dry, mark my words." Some of them approached Jiho directly. A group of the scaled merchants cornered him in the dining hall one day. "Human," their leader said, his voice cold with disgust. "We must warn you about the female you have been meeting. She is not like us. She is a predator, a monster from a dead world." Jiho looked at them calmly. He took a bite of his food and chewed slowly before responding. "I know what Yuna is," he said. "She told me herself. And you are not afraid? Should I be?" Jiho set down his eating utensils and looked at each of them in turn. "Has she hurt anyone on this ship? In the 5 years she has been here, has she harmed a single being?" The merchants exchanged glances. They had no answer. "I have known her for 2 months," Jiho continued. "In that time she has been kind, thoughtful, and gentle. She asks me about my family. She worries when I work too late. She remembers every small thing I tell her." He stood up and faced the merchants directly. "Can any of you say the same about her? Have any of you ever spoken to her? Or have you only spoken about her?" The merchants had no response. They shuffled away, muttering among themselves. Word of the confrontation spread quickly. Some beings began to look at Yuna differently, not with acceptance, but with curiosity. If a human, one of those brave and strange creatures, thought she was worth knowing, perhaps there was more to her than the old stories suggested. But old fears die hard. Most still kept their distance. Yuna did not care. For the first time in centuries, she had a friend. One friend was enough. Their meetings became a daily ritual. Every evening, after Jiho finished his work, he would find Yuna in their usual spot. He would bring coffee for himself and synthetic blood for her. They would talk for hours about everything and nothing. She told him about her world, Noctis Prime. She described the cities of black stone and the silver forest that had never known sunlight. She spoke of her people, their art and music, their strange and beautiful customs. Her voice grew sad when she talked about the war, about the fires that had consumed everything she loved. Jiho listened without interrupting. When she finished, he reached out and took her cold hand in his warm one. "I am sorry," he said simply. "I am sorry that happened to you. To your people. It was a long time ago. Time does not heal all wounds. Some we carry forever." Yuna looked at him with surprise. Most beings thought that because she was old, she should be over her grief. They did not understand that some losses never stop hurting. "How do you know that?" she asked. Jiho was quiet for a moment. "I lost my mother when I was 15. A sickness took her. It has been 10 years, but some days the pain feels fresh. I think it always will. I am sorry, Jiho." "Do not be. She lived well. She loved well. That is all any of us can hope for." They sat in comfortable silence, hand in hand, two lonely souls who had found each other in the vastness of space. One evening, Jiho arrived with a strange device. It was small and rectangular, with buttons on one side and a speaker on the other. "What is that?" Yuna asked. "A music player. I brought it from Earth." He pressed a button, and sound filled the room. It was unlike anything Yuna had heard before. A gentle melody played on instruments she could not name, accompanied by a human voice singing in a language she did not understand. "This is beautiful," she whispered. "It is called a ballad, a love song. My mother used to sing it to me when I was young." Yuna closed her eyes and let the music wash over her. For a moment, she was not a lonely vampire on a drifting ship. She was simply a person, experiencing something wonderful. When the song ended, she opened her eyes and found Jiho watching her with a strange expression. "What?" she asked. "Nothing. It is just, you have a beautiful smile." Yuna touched her face, surprised to find that she was indeed smiling. She could not remember the last time she had smiled so freely. "Thank you for this," she said. "For the music. For everything. You do not need to thank me. This is what friends do." Friends. The word felt warm and precious, like a treasure she had never expected to find. As the days passed, other humans began to follow Jiho's example. They were a curious species, and his acceptance of Yuna made them bold. One by one, they approached her. A young woman named Yoonji asked Yuna about vampire history. She was a scientist who studied cultures and societies, and she listened with genuine fascination as Yuna described the customs of Noctis Prime. Large man named Taiwu invited Yuna to watch the humans exercise. He was impressed when she showed him her strength, lifting weights that took 3 humans to move. A quiet woman named Mireille shared her art with Yuna drawings of landscapes and people, created with nothing but a stick of carbon and sheets of paper. Yuna was amazed at how humans could create such beauty with such simple tools. Not all the humans were friendly, of course. Some kept their distance, uncomfortable with her red eyes and sharp fangs. But they did not fear. They simply did not know her yet. For the first time in centuries, Yuna felt like she might have a place in the universe. But happiness, she knew from long experience, was a fragile thing. And darkness was always waiting, ready to swallow the light. One night, as Yuna and Jiho sat together, an alarm shattered the peace. It was not the friendly chime of an arriving ship. It was a harsh, screaming sound that meant only one thing: danger. The captain's voice crackled through the speakers, old and frightened. "All residents, this is an emergency. Raiders have been detected approaching the Eternal Dawn. All non-combat personnel, proceed to the shelter areas immediately. This is not a drill." Jiho stood up, his face pale but determined. "Raiders," he said grimly. "I have heard of them. Pirates who attack colony ships. They take everything: supplies, technology, sometimes people." Yuna felt something old and dark stirring inside her. Something she had kept buried for a very long time. "How many?" she asked. "The sensors show 3 ships. At least 200 raiders." Yuna thought of the beings on this ship. The families, the children, the friends she had finally begun to make. She thought of Jiho, so kind and brave. She made a decision. "Stay in the shelter," she told Jiho. "Keep the others safe." "What are you going to do?" Yuna stood, and for the first time, Jiho saw her as she truly was. Her eyes burned bright red. Her fangs gleamed in the low light. Her body seemed to radiate power, cold and terrible. "I am going to remind the galaxy why they fear vampires." The alarm echoed through the eternal dawn. It was not a warning of danger, but an announcement. A new ship was requesting permission to dock. Yuna heard it from her dark corner. She did not move. New ships came and went all the time. Traders, refugees, travelers seeking a temporary home. None of them ever mattered to her. None of them ever noticed her. But this time was different. The captain's voice came through the speakers. Old and tired, but filled with something unusual. Excitement, perhaps. Or maybe curiosity. "Attention all residents of the Eternal Dawn. We are about to receive our first human visitors. Please welcome them with respect and kindness. They have traveled far to meet us." Humans. Yuna sat up straighter. She had heard so much about them, but had never seen one in person. They were a young species, barely a few thousand years old. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel in the last century. But in that short time, they had spread across dozens of star systems, making friends and enemies in equal measure. The stories about humans were strange and contradictory. Some said they were weak, with soft bodies and short lives. Others said they were terrifying, capable of surviving injuries that would kill any other species. Some said they were kind and generous. Others said they were violent and unpredictable. Yuna did not know what to believe. But she was curious. For the first time in years, she felt something other than loneliness. She made her way through the ship, staying in the shadows as always. The docking bay was on the upper levels, far from her usual hiding places. She would have to be careful not to be seen. When she arrived, she found a crowd had already gathered. Dozens of aliens stood waiting, their many eyes fixed on the airlock door. The captain stood at the front, his 6 arms folded in a gesture of welcome. Yuna stayed at the back, hidden behind a support column. She peered around it, watching and waiting. The airlock hissed open, and then she saw them. There were about 30 humans in total. They wore simple clothing uniforms of blue and gray with patches on their shoulders, showing a planet she did not recognize. They were smaller than most species on the ship, with smooth skin in various shades of brown and pink. Their eyes were round and curious, looking at everything with wonder. They were not impressive. Not physically. They had no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. They looked fragile, almost delicate. But there was something in the way they moved. Something confident. They walked like they belonged everywhere, like the universe was their home and they were simply visiting different rooms. One human caught Yuna's attention immediately. He was young, probably in his mid-20s by human standards. He had short black hair and warm brown eyes. His face was kind, with a gentle smile that seemed permanent. He carried a bag of tools over his shoulder, and his hands were rough with work. His name tag read Jiho, followed by words. Yuna could not read. While the other humans talked with the captain, Jiho looked around the docking bay. His eyes moved from place to place, taking in every detail. And then, impossibly, his gaze found Yuna. She froze. No one ever noticed her in the shadows. Her pale skin and dark clothes made her almost invisible in low light. But this human looked directly at her, as if she were standing in bright sunlight. She expected him to look away, to flinch, to show fear. He smiled and gave a small wave. Yuna was so shocked that she forgot to hide. She stood there, staring at him, her red eyes wide with disbelief. Before she could react, another alien grabbed Jiho's arm. It was a tall creature with blue scales, one of the merchant class that dominated the ship's economy. "Be careful, human," the creature hissed. "You see that female in the shadows? That is the blood drinker, the beast. Stay away from her if you value your life." Jiho looked at Yuna again. Then he looked back at the blue creature. His smile did not fade. "She does not look like a beast to me," he said simply. "She looks lonely." The blue creature made a sound of disgust and walked away. Yuna watched, her heart beating fast in her chest. A heart that had not beaten fast in centuries. The humans were given quarters on the middle deck, not far from Yuna's hiding places. She learned that they were engineers and scientists sent to help prepare the Eternal Dawn's aging systems. They would stay for several months, perhaps longer. Yuna tried to avoid them. She changed her routes through the ship, found new shadows to hide in. But somehow, Jiho always seemed to appear. She would be sitting alone in an observation room, and he would walk in with a cup of something warm. She would be standing in a quiet hallway, and he would pass by with a friendly nod. She would be hiding in the engine room, listening to the hum of the machines, and he would arrive to check the power systems. Each time, he acknowledged her, not with fear or disgust, but with simple kindness. A smile, a wave, sometimes just a look that said, "I see you." After 2 weeks, Yuna could not take it anymore. She was sitting in her usual dark corner when Jiho appeared with his tool bag. He walked past her, then stopped. He turned around and looked at her for a long moment. "Would you mind if I sat here?" he asked. His voice was warm and gentle. "The lighting is perfect for reading technical manuals." Yuna stared at him. "You want to sit here? With me? Why not?" "Because I am a vampire. A blood drinker. A beast." Jiho shrugged. "I have read about vampires. You drink blood to survive. Humans eat the flesh of animals to survive. I do not see the difference." He sat down across from her, pulled out a small tablet, and began reading. Just like that, as if sitting next to a centuries-old vampire was the most normal thing in the universe. Yuna did not know what to say, so she said nothing. They sat in silence for an hour. Then Jiho looked up and smiled. "Same time tomorrow?" Yuna found herself nodding before she could stop. The next day, he came back. And the day after. And the day after that. Sometimes they sat in silence. Sometimes Jiho talked about his work, explaining things about engines and power systems that Yuna did not understand. Sometimes he asked her questions, simple questions, not invasive. What was her favorite color? Did she like music? Had she ever seen Earth? At first, Yuna answered with short, careful words. She was waiting for the trick, waiting for him to reveal that this was all a joke, or worse, a trap. But the trick never came. Jiho was simply kind. That was all. He was kind without reason, without expectation, without fear. One day, he brought 2 containers from the human food supplies. One held a brown liquid that smelled bitter but pleasant. "Coffee," he explained. "Humans love it." And this, he held up the other container, filled with dark red liquid. Synthetic blood. I asked the medical bay if I could have some. I thought we could share a drink. Yuna took the container with trembling hands. No one had ever done something like this for her. No one had ever thought about what she might want. "Why are you so kind to me?" she whispered. Jiho took a sip of his coffee and considered the question. "On Earth, we have many stories about monsters," he said. "Vampires, werewolves, ghosts, demons. When I was young, I was afraid of them. But my grandmother told me something I never forgot." He looked at Yuna with those warm brown eyes. She said that the worst monsters are the ones who look normal but have no kindness in their hearts. And the best people are sometimes the ones who look frightening but have hearts full of love. Una felt tears forming in her eyes. She had not cried in front of another being in centuries. I do not know you well yet, Jiho continued. But I would like to, if you will let me. For the first time in 800 years, Una smiled. A real smile, full and warm, showing her fangs without shame. I would like that too, she said. And somewhere in the vast coldness of space, a heart that had been frozen for centuries began to thaw. The colony ship Eternal Dawn drifted through the endless black of space. It was a massive vessel, home to over 50,000 beings from dozens of different worlds. Species of all kinds lived there, tall ones, short ones, creatures with scales and creatures with fur. They had come together to find a new home among the stars. But not everyone on the ship was welcome. Una sat alone in the dark corner of the lower deck. She had chosen this spot because no one ever came here. The lights were broken and the air was cold. Most beings on the ship liked warmth and brightness. Una did not mind the cold. She had stopped minding many things a long time ago. She was beautiful in a strange and frightening way. Her skin was pale like fresh snow. Her eyes were deep red, like 2 drops of blood floating in white. Her hair was long and black, falling past her shoulders like a dark waterfall. When she smiled, which was rare, her teeth showed 2 sharp fangs. Una was a vampire. She had lived for over 800 years. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had watched stars be born and die. But in all those centuries, she had never found a place where she truly belonged. The other species on the ship feared her. They whispered about her in the hallways. They told their children stories about her at night, not to entertain them, but to warn them. Stay away from the blood drinker, they would say. She is a beast. She will drain you dry if you get too close. Una heard these whispers. She heard everything. Her ears were sharp, and the walls of the ship carried sounds in strange ways. Every cruel word reached her. Every fearful gasp when she walked past. Every parent pulling their child away when she came near. It hurt. Even after 800 years, it still hurt. She remembered a time long ago when her people were many. They had lived on a dark world called Noctis Prime. It was a planet of eternal night where the sun never rose. Her kind had thrived there, living in beautiful cities made of black stone and silver metal. But then the war came. The Galactic Council had decided that vampires were too dangerous. They said her people were monsters who could not be trusted. A great fleet had come to Noctis Prime. They had burned everything. The cities, the forests, the mountains, all of it turned to ash. Una was one of the few survivors. She had escaped on a small ship, hiding among the stars for centuries. She moved from place to place, never staying long. Whenever people learned what she was, they drove her away. 5 years ago, she had found the Eternal Dawn. She had begged the captain to let her stay. She had promised to cause no trouble. She had promised to drink only synthetic blood, never from living beings. The captain, an old creature with 6 arms and kind eyes, had agreed. But he had also warned her. The others will not accept you, he had said. You must keep to yourself. Stay in the shadows. Do not give them reason to fear you more than they already do. So Una had stayed in the shadows. She had made her home in the forgotten corners of the ship. She came out only when necessary to get her rations of synthetic blood, to use the medical bay, to feel the hum of the engine beneath her feet. She watched the others from afar. She watched families eat meals together in the dining hall. She watched friends laugh and talk in the recreation areas. She watched lovers walk hand in hand through the garden deck, where artificial sunlight made flowers bloom. Why Una wanted those things. She wanted them so badly, it made her chest ache. But every time she tried to approach someone, they ran. Every time she tried to speak, they looked at her with terror in their eyes. She had stopped trying years ago. Tonight, like every other night, she sat in her dark corner and stared at the stars through a small window. The universe was so vast. Billions of stars, trillions of planets, countless forms of life. Yet she was alone. She pulled her knees to her chest and wrapped her arms around them. It was a very human gesture, one she had learned from watching old Earth broadcasts. Humans were fascinating creatures. She had never met one in person, but she had heard stories. They were a young species, only recently joining the galactic community. They were said to be curious and brave, sometimes foolishly so. Yuna wondered what humans would think of her. Would they fear like everyone else? Probably. All species feared what they did not understand. A tear rolled down her pale cheek. She wiped it away quickly, angry at herself for showing weakness. What was the point of crying? Tears had never changed anything. They had not brought back her people. They had not made her less alone. She stood up and walked to the window. Her reflection stared back at her red eyes, sharp fangs, a face that had not aged in centuries. She hated that reflection. She hated what she was. Monster, she whispered to herself. That is what they call you. Maybe they are right. But deep inside, in a place she rarely allowed herself to visit, she knew the truth. She was not a monster. She had never killed an innocent being. She had never drunk blood from someone who did not offer it freely. She had spent her long life trying to be good, trying to prove that her kind were not the beasts the galaxy believed them to be. It had never been enough. Yuna pressed her hand against the cold glass of the window. Out there, somewhere, was a place where she might belong. A place where someone might look at her and see not a monster, but a person. A lonely person who had lived too long and loved too little. Maybe someday, she whispered to the stars. Maybe someday someone will see the real me. The stars did not answer. They never did. She turned away from the window and walked deeper into the shadows. Tomorrow would be the same as today. And the day after that. And the day after that. An endless parade of lonely nights stretching into forever. But Yuna did not know that tomorrow would be different. She did not know that a ship was approaching the eternal dawn at that very moment. A ship carrying beings who would change everything. A ship carrying humans. And among those humans was a young man named Jiho, who had never learned to be afraid of the dark. Yuna opened her eyes. She was not dead. That was the first thing she noticed. The second thing she noticed was the ceiling above her. It was clean and white, with soft lights that did not hurt her sensitive eyes. She was in the medical bay. The third thing she noticed was Jiho. He was sitting beside her bed, his head resting on his arms, asleep. His face was tired and pale, with dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he had not slept properly in days. Yuna tried to move. Pain shot through her chest, but it was distant, manageable. She looked down and saw bandages wrapped around her body, along with tubes carrying dark red liquid into her veins. Blood. They were giving her blood. You are awake. The voice came from the doorway. Yuna turned her head and saw the old captain standing there, his 6 arms folded in a gesture she did not recognize. His many eyes were soft with emotion. How long? Yuna asked. Her voice was rough and dry. 5 days. The doctors did not think you would survive. Your wound was severe, and you had exhausted yourself completely. The captain moved closer to her bed. But the humans refused to give up on you. Yuna looked at Jiho, still sleeping beside her. He stayed? He has not left your side since we brought you here. He gave blood for your transfusions when our synthetic supplies ran low. 3 times. The captain paused. He is not the only one. What do you mean? When word spread that you needed blood to survive, beings came from all over the ship to donate. Humans, of course, but also others. species that had feared you for years. They came to the medical bay and offered whatever they could. Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes. Why? I do not understand. They were afraid of me. They were afraid of you, the captain agreed. But you saved them. You saved all of us. 173 raiders attacked this ship. You defeated most of them single-handedly. You saved the hostages in the garden deck. You protected the shelters where the children were hiding. He reached out with one of his hands and gently touched her shoulder. You proved that you are not a monster. Yuna, you proved that you are exactly what that young human said you were from the beginning. Someone with a heart full of love. Yuna could not stop the tears now. They fell down her pale cheeks, warm and real. Jiho stirred. His eyes fluttered open, and when he saw Yuna looking at him, his whole face changed. The exhaustion vanished. Joy broke through like sunlight through clouds. Yuna. He grabbed her hand, careful not to disturb her bandages. You are awake. You are alive. Thanks to you, I am told. No, you saved yourself. He paused, struggling for words. I just could not lose you. Not when I had finally found you. The captain quietly left the room, giving them privacy. Yuna squeezed Jiho's hand. You gave me your blood. Human blood. I thought that was something humans feared. Being drained by a vampire. Old stories. Fears from a time when we did not understand. Jiho smiled, that warm smile she had come to treasure. Besides, you needed it. What else was I supposed to do? Let you die? Most beings would have. I am not most beings. I am your friend. Friend. The word felt inadequate now. Yuna looked at Jiho, at his tired eyes, his unwashed hair, his rumpled clothes. He had stayed beside her for 5 days. He had given his own blood to keep her alive. He had refused to give up, even when the doctor said there was no hope. That was more than friendship. That was something deeper. Jiho, she said softly. Why? Why have you done all this for me? From the very beginning, why did you choose to see past what I am? Jiho was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. When I first saw you in the docking bay, hiding in the shadows, I saw something familiar. I saw someone who was lonely and scared, but trying to be brave. I saw someone who wanted to connect but was afraid of being rejected. He paused. I saw myself. You? I was not always the person you see now. When I was young, after my mother died, I became withdrawn. I pushed people away. I convinced myself that I was better off alone. The caring about people only led to pain. He smiled sadly. It took years for me to understand that being alone was worse than any pain. That connection, even with its risks, is what makes life worth living. He lifted her hand and pressed it gently to his cheek. When I saw you, I recognized that loneliness. And I decided that if I could help one person feel less alone, it would be worth any risk. Yuna reached up with her other hand and touched his face. He did not flinch from her cold fingers. You did help me, she whispered. More than you know. The door opened again. This time, it was not the captain. Yunji came in first, carrying a small bouquet of flowers from the garden deck. Behind her came Taiwu, holding a container of food. Then Mireille, with a drawing clutched carefully in her hands. Then more humans, and then surprisingly beings of other species as well. The blue-scaled merchant who had once warned Jiho to stay away from her. The small furry creatures that cleaned the hallways. The tall, silent beings that worked in engineering thought they filled the room until there was barely space to stand. What is this? Yuna asked, overwhelmed. We came to see you, Yunji said simply. To thank you. And to apologize. Apologize? The blue-scaled merchant stepped forward. He looked uncomfortable, but he met her eyes directly. "I was wrong about you," he said. "For years I spread fear and hatred. I told everyone you were a monster, a beast to be avoided. I never once tried to know you. I never once considered that I might be wrong." He bowed his head. "I am sorry." One by one, others echoed his words. Species that had avoided her for years, beings who had whispered about her in hallways, aliens who had pulled their children away when she walked past. They all came forward to apologize and to thank her. "You saved my daughter," one mother said through tears. "She was in the garden deck. She would be gone if not for you." "You protected our homes," said the engineering chief. "Our families. Our lives. You bled for us," said the captain, who had returned to join the crowd. "You nearly died for us. After everything we did to you, all the fear and hatred and isolation, you still fought for us." Una did not know what to say. She looked at all of them, these beings who had feared her for so long, now looking at her with gratitude and respect. It was too much. It was everything she had wanted for 800 years that Jiho spoke for her. "Una is not a monster," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She never was. She is a survivor, a protector, a person who was treated badly by the universe but never stopped trying to be good." He looked at her with shining eyes. "She is the bravest person I have ever known. And she is not alone anymore," Yunji added. "She is one of us now." "Family," Taiwu said, his deep voice firm with conviction. "That is what she is. Family." The word spread through the crowd like a wave. Family. 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 Una broke down completely. 800 years of loneliness, of pain, of believing she would never belong anywhere, all of it came pouring out in great shaking sobs. She had lived so long. She had lost so much. She had believed she would spend eternity alone. And now, in this moment, surrounded by beings who had finally seen her true self, she understood that she had been wrong. Jiho held her as she cried. The others waited patiently, giving her time. No one left. No one looked away. When the tears finally stopped, Una looked up at Jiho through swollen eyes. "You gave me something I never thought I would have again," she said. "A home, a family, a reason to live." "You always had it," Jiho replied. "You just needed to find people who could see it." He leaned forward and gently kissed her forehead. "You are not a beast, Una. You are not a monster. You are a person who deserves to be loved. And we love you. All of us." Una pulled him close and held him tight. Around them, the crowd began to disperse, giving them privacy. But as they left, each being paused to touch Una gently, a hand on her shoulder, a pat on her head, a brush against her arm. Small gestures of acceptance and affection. When they were finally alone, Una whispered into Jiho's chest, "I am scared." "Of what?" "Of being happy. Every time I have found happiness, it has been taken from me. My world, my people, everything." Jiho pulled back and looked into her red eyes. "I cannot promise that nothing bad will ever happen. I cannot promise that we will have forever." He smiled that warm, wonderful smile. "But I can promise to be beside you for as long as I live. I can promise that you will never be alone again. Your life is so short compared to mine. What will I do when you are gone? You will grieve. You will hurt. And then you will keep living. You will find new friends, new family, new reasons to smile. Because that is what survivors do." He took her hand. "And you are the greatest survivor I know." Una looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled a real smile, full and bright, showing her fangs without shame. "I love you," she said. "I did not think I could say those words to anyone ever again. But I love you, Jiho. I love you too. Una, I think I've loved you since that first day in the docking bay." Outside the window, the stars continued their endless journey through the darkness of space. The eternal dawn drifted on, carrying its passengers toward an uncertain future. But for Yuna, for the first time in 800 years, the future did not seem frightening. It seemed full of possibility, full of hope, full of love, and that, she decided, was worth living another 800 years to see. The raider ships attached to the eternal dawn like parasites feeding on a wounded animal. Their docking clamps tore through the hull, creating entry points in 3 different sections of the ship. Alarms screamed through every corridor. Emergency lights flashed red, painting everything in the color of blood. Yuna moved through the ship like a shadow. She was faster than she had been in centuries. The blood in her veins, synthetic though it was, burned with power. Her senses were sharp. She could hear the raiders breaching the outer doors, could smell the fear of the beings hiding in the shelters. She found the first group of raiders in the cargo bay. There were about 30 of them. They were ugly creatures, a mix of different species that had abandoned any pretense of civilization. Their leader was massive, with 4 arms and skin like cracked stone. He was shouting orders, directing his soldiers to start loading valuable cargo onto their ships. They did not see Yuna. She was standing in the shadows at the edge of the bay, watching them with glowing red eyes. "Spread out," the leader commanded. "Take everything worth taking, and find me prisoners. The slave markets pay well for workers." Slaves. They intended to take people. Yuna thought of the families hiding in the shelters. She thought of the children who would cry for their parents. She thought of Jiho and Yunji and Taiwu and Mireille. Something ancient and terrible awakened inside her. She stepped out of the shadows. "You should leave," she said, her voice calm and cold. "This is your only warning." The raiders turned. The leader laughed, a harsh sound like stones grinding together. "What is this? A pale female thinks she can threaten us?" He walked toward her, towering over her small form. "Do you know who I am, little one? I am Gronak the Crusher. I have destroyed 100 ships. I have killed thousands." "I have killed more," Yuna replied. Gronak's laughter died. He looked at her more closely, at her pale skin, her red eyes, her sharp fangs. "A vampire," he breathed. "I thought your kind were extinct." "Almost. But not quite." Gronak took a step back. Even he had heard the legends. But then his pride overcame his fear. He was a raider lord. He did not run from anyone. "Kill her," he ordered his soldiers. Now, the raiders rushed forward. They carried weapons of all kinds, energy blades, plasma guns, crude clubs made from metal pipes. They were hardened fighters, veterans of countless raids. It did not matter. Yuna moved to the raiders. She simply vanished. One moment she was standing still. The next moment she was among them, a blur of white and shadow. Her hands, which had seemed so delicate, struck with the force of a machine. Her teeth, those sharp fangs, found throats and arteries. It was over in seconds. 28 raiders lay on the ground, broken and still. Gronak stood alone, surrounded by the bodies of his soldiers. His stone-like face had gone pale. "Monster," he whispered. "Yes," Yuna agreed. "I am exactly what they say I am. Now run. Tell your friends what waits for them here." Gronak ran. He fled toward his ship, screaming for retreat. But Yuna was not finished. She could hear more raiders in other parts of the ship. Some had reached the residential areas. Some were close to the shelters. She could not let them reach the shelters. Yuna ran. She moved through the corridors faster than the eye could follow, a pale streak in the red emergency lighting. She found the second group of raiders trying to break through a barricade that the crew had set up. There were 50 of them. better armed than the first group. They had cutting tools and heavy weapons. In minutes, they would be through. Yuna did not give them minutes. She dropped from the ceiling into the middle of their group. Her attacks were precise and deadly. She did not waste energy on rage or cruelty. She simply eliminated threats with cold efficiency. Every strike was calculated. Every movement served a purpose. Now the raiders tried to fight back. Some fired their weapons at her, but she was too fast. The energy bolts hit walls and each other. Some tried to run, but she caught them before they could take 3 steps in less than 2 minutes. 50 raiders were down. Yuna paused to catch her breath. The synthetic blood in her body was burning quickly. She needed more. But there was no time. The third group. She had to find the third group. She followed the sounds of screaming and found them in the garden deck. This was the most dangerous group. They had already taken hostages. About 20 civilians knelt in the artificial grass, surrounded by armed raiders. The leader of this group, a tall creature with multiple eyes, held a child in his grasp. "Stay back." The leader shouted at the few security officers who had gathered. "Come any closer and I start killing them." The security officers hesitated. They had weapons, but they could not risk the hostages. Yuna assessed the situation from the shadows. There were 40 raiders spread out among the hostages. If she attacked directly, some hostages would die. She needed to be smart. She closed her eyes and reached deep into herself, into abilities she had not used in centuries. Vampire powers were not just physical. Some of them touched the mind. When she opened her eyes, they burned brighter than ever. "Look at me," she commanded. Her voice carried a weight that had nothing to do with volume. It was a psychic command, ancient and irresistible. Every raider in the room turned to look at her, and then they saw her true self. Yuna dropped all pretense of appearing normal. She let them see what 800 years of existence had created. She let them see the predator, the ancient one, the survivor of genocide, the last daughter of Noctis Prime. The raiders saw their deaths, written in her red eyes. Half of them dropped their weapons immediately, overcome by pure terror. They fell to their knees, babbling and crying. The other half tried to run. Yuna did not let them. She moved through them like wind through leaves. She was mercy and she was death. She did not kill those who had surrendered, but she showed no quarter to those who ran. When it was over, she stood in the center of the garden deck, surrounded by defeated raiders and freed hostages. The child that had been held captive ran to her mother. Security officers rushed in to secure the survivors, and then she heard it. A single shot. Pain exploded in her chest. She looked down and saw a hole in her body, a wound from an energy weapon. One raider had hidden behind a fallen tree. He was aiming for a second shot. He never got the chance. Security officers tackled him to the ground. Yuna fell to her knees. The wound was bad. Even for a vampire, it was very bad. She had used too much power, burned through too much blood. She had nothing left to heal with. The world began to go dark. Through failing eyes, she saw someone running toward her. A human. Black hair, brown eyes, a kind face twisted with fear. Jiho. He had not stayed in the shelter. He had come looking for her. Yuna. No. He knelt beside her, pressing his hands against the wound as if he could hold her life inside. "Someone help! Get a medic!" "Jiho," she whispered. Her voice was weak, fading. "You should have stayed safe." I could not. Tears were running down his face. "I could not hide while you fought alone." Yuna smiled. Even now, even dying, she could smile because of him. "I'm glad I met you," she said. "For the first time in centuries. I was happy. Do not say goodbye." "You are not allowed to say goodbye." She tried to respond, but no words came. The darkness was taking her. The last thing she felt was Jiho's warm hand holding hers. The last thing she saw was his face, full of love and grief. And then, nothing.